Welcome to Ask Dr. Change. I'm Dr. Linda Ackerman Anderson. I'm happy to have you join me today to explore how to seriously uplevel your leadership and consulting to transformational changes, all through conscious change leadership. Welcome. Today's episode is about turning resistance to change into commitment. I've received so many questions about how do we do this and what's the deal with change management, people feeling that they can't get the adoption that they need. People are digging their heels in. Project management folks saying that's not our task to do. It's the leaders, it's the change managers. It's everyone's task to do. How do we turn resistance into commitment for the change that the organization needs to make? You know, everyone resists. We resist what we fear. We resist what we don't agree with. We resist what we wish wasn't happening. The list goes on. It's important to understand the source of resistance to be able to deal with it effectively. And who resists? You, me, leaders, stakeholders, and think about our spouses, our kids, others in positions of power, of influence, politicians. Think about how much resistance we're seeing in the world today. It's everywhere. It consumes so much energy. So we are in a position to help, especially in the organizational context, to skillfully help the organization leaders, our stakeholders, to be able to move through what automatically, inevitably shows up as resistance to change. And so as leaders of change, as consultants to change, it's our job to set up the conditions right from the very beginning, to put them in place to minimize resistance. Also, right from the get-go, from the beginning of the change, to realize we need to set this up in a way to minimize resistance. And then we need to know how to skillfully reduce it when it does show up, or mitigate it, because it will show up. It's inevitable. We so frequently, want to make a shift. I know this is really true in our family. We want to make a shift in what we're doing. Maybe it's a small one, like where to go to dinner, or a big one, like where we want to live. And when resistance shows up, we just need to be able to honor that it's a reality. It's a human dynamic. So we need to understand the human dynamics that people go through when faced with change, and learn how to facilitate people through their process so that they can move through their against position, their troublesome feelings, and be open to potentially or authentically committing to the new direction, especially as an organization, to be able to support the organization to do what it needs to do to thrive. So ideally, we're working with people who may be experiencing resistance to help them discover how the change could actually serve them. That's an important context in how to do this. The process cannot be forced. It cannot be mandated. It's something that we need to help facilitate, support, be present for. Supporting resistance in others only occurs when people resolve their own fears and see the value of moving forward. So how do we catalyze this shift in others? Resistance naturally resolves if the person is properly supported. It takes a certain kind of way of being to support an individual to go through their internal process, to put it in motion so they can actually move through what they're working with in order to step into a more positive, supportive reality. So in positions of influencing this process, how you are being is more important than what you are doing when you're working directly one-on-one or with a group of folks that are experiencing resistance. We're all familiar with the skill of active listening. It's a very effective starting point. If you're not fully aware of active listening or skillful in active listening, I would encourage you to pursue understanding what that communication skill, competency enables you to accomplish working with others who may be experiencing resistance. So let's look at the dynamics of resistance and the process to address it. What does it look like during organizational change? Wow, there are so many ways that resistance shows up. So some people make the assumption they're against us. They're doing this to us. Some people begin to meander into the good old days. I like the way it is. I'm comfortable in my current reality. Some are unconcerned or apathetic or confused. Many times you'll experience a lack of initiative, perhaps some anger at the company for doing this to us. Some people withdraw or become uncooperative, oppositional. Some are passive. There's lower energy, a reduction in performance. Perhaps you see folks blaming others, making big complaints. Sometimes people are just not interested in new information. They're closed off or they can't hear it. They're not able to take it in. Sometimes people are doubting their own abilities to be able to succeed in the new state, and that causes them to not want to go there. Resistance takes so many forms. It's really important to be able to recognize the variety so that we can design an approach to support people based upon how their resistance is showing up. There's a whole series of levels of commitment, moving people from resistance all the way through to commitment and full alignment. Frequently, what I just described to you, you'll see people resisting. And then perhaps based upon how they're interacting with the change or you're interacting or communicating with them, perhaps you'll get compliance. All right, I'm willing. Maybe you'll get agreement. And that means, okay, I will do this. I see it. I don't like it. That's agreement. Ideally, we'll at least get buy-in. Okay, I see the need for this. I'm willing to step in, I think. Ideally, we'll allow people or support people to take on some kind of initial engagement, get their toes in the water, perhaps more than their toes in the water, so they begin to participate in the positive movement. That leads us to a level of commitment where they have the intention to actually support. Commitment is high level of intention to see this thing through. Ideally, what we're after is full-on alignment when we put our intention to be committed to the change into action. Full alignment is intention and action. So what we're after is getting leaders and stakeholders and anyone in a position of resistance to full alignment. So they'll fully participate and dive in and do what's necessary. That's what's really important. Now, a lot of our job is how we influence people to move up from compliance to agreement to buy-in and engagement, commitment, and alignment. How do we motivate people to move in this direction? If we're motivating by fear or threat or challenge, I'll talk a little bit more about this, the best we'll get is compliance or agreement. If we're motivating by choice, helping people see what's in it for them, the value the change will bring to the organization and therefore to them, then we can get buy-in, initial engagement and participating, taking steps forward, commitment, and alignment. That's what's really important. So there's so many assumptions that we make about how to overcome resistance. I'm going to list several and ask you to think about, what do you see? What do you do? What are the ways in which you begin addressing resistance? The worst of this is to threaten. If you don't make this change, your job is at risk, right? That's the worst possible thing, because at most you may get compliance, and that may not stick. Another thing that people typically do is make judgments about resistance. You are wrong. You're inadequate. You're not up to this. You're not in the boat. You're not supportive. You don't know how, whatever. When we make internal judgments that then begin to get expressed, we're only making things worse. Some leaders move into tell, this is what we're going to do, and I expect your compliance. And so they may not say the word compliance, but that's in fact what they're communicating. This is what we're going to do, and I expect you to do it. So that's compliance. Some leaders will sell it. This is a great thing. This is important. This is what we need to do. And cajole, beg. I want you in here. I want you to like this. This is important to us, which isn't a real position of strength, cajoling, but it is one way in which leaders deal with resistance. Other leaders will challenge. I challenge us to take this on. I challenge us to meet our goals. And there's pressure behind that. There's a little innuendo of threat. So this is what we need to do. And if we don't, but creating a challenge, setting high expectations or setting goals is a positive way of engaging people if it's not too big a hill to climb. So the best strategies where I really want to focus our attention today are more human, I will say. The first is to connect with the people who are resisting. That means be present with them. That means show up with them, to interact with them, to be really available to them, to understand what they're going through in relation to what you're asking them to do. That may require actively listening to understand their reality, not negate it, not debate it, not defend, just to understand their reality and what the source of their resistance really is. That takes inquiring, asking clarifying questions. Tell me more. I'll give you a whole list of clarifying questions here shortly. We need to provide support. What can we do to make this better, easier for you to be successful, for you to want to do it? How can we encourage them to proceed in the direction we're asking them? Perhaps we can reward, we can certainly recognize. There's some way in which we need to create a condition of inviting and safety and support for those who are resisting to be able to move forward. One of the most powerful things that we can do is to ask clarifying questions when we are face to face. Sometimes it's with an individual, sometimes it's with a team if we're after more team commitment and alignment. Here's a whole list of questions that clarify, that are really positioned to be truthfully listening to what the individual is going through and might need to have answered in order to contribute. What is your reaction to the new direction? What assumptions might you be making about what we're trying to do here? What do you want to have happen here? What concerns do you have about this change and your place in it, your role in it, where you would fit in it? What do you see that you don't think leaders see? What are we not recognizing about what we're asking you to do? What might be beneficial to you if it could occur? If you could get a benefit out of this, what would that be? What part do you want to play in the new reality? What would be exciting or enticing for you? What do you need to be willing and able to do to proceed along with everyone else in this change? And what kind of support do you need? Any of these questions will open the possibility for resistance to be resolved, to be mitigated, to be released. That's what we're after in dealing with folks who are resisting. There's a whole process that people go through. They feel resistance, and then ultimately they want to get, or we want them to get, to commitment and alignment. Here's a little bit about that process. As I go through this, I want you to think about your leaders and your stakeholders who may in fact be resisting and therefore going through this process. So let's say the leaders announce the change. Their intent is to inform, to compel, to educate, to shed light on where the organization is going and why. Typically, now this is all generalized, typically then people will react and they may go into their resistance. They don't understand, or they go into denial, or why do we have to do this? Or they'll question, what in the world would we do this for? Perhaps they'll withdraw. Oh man, where do I belong in this? Maybe they'll doubt or lose productivity or criticize. They enter what we call the pit, which is all those negative reactions that are the form of resistance that I just described. People will go into reaction in the face of something very different than they're accustomed to. Now, our job is to support the rest of the process. In order for them to begin to let go, we need to give them the kind of support that will allow them to begin to release the old way. They begin to let go. And we may hear them say, I remember the good old days. We used to do it like this, and it was so good and so easy. Letting go also may look like getting curious. Maybe we could. And maybe they'll start to engage, or they'll lighten up about the change, or they'll have a little bit of curiosity about, now maybe. Then they move into a stage that we call testing the limits, where they are actually taking a step towards engaged action towards, maybe we could do it this way. Sometimes they'll bargain. I'll do the new technology if you keep the old one online for the first whatever. That's bargaining, but it's testing the possibilities of what we're asking them to do. They may do trial and error. Let me try this out and see how it goes. They'll experiment, or they'll start to learn the new skills required or taking on the new information necessary for them to be successful. Testing the limits. That's getting them more than toes in the water. It's those actions that then move them into beginning to build commitment, where they're finding some value in what we're asking them to do. They're seeing their role in it, seeing it with new eyes, and it's beginning to have new meaning for them, seeking new possibilities. That's all really positive in their process. We need to support it. We need to acknowledge and recognize it, especially if they come up with something we haven't thought of or we haven't seen. That gets great recognition to move them as well as others along when they see, oh, so it's possible we can put our fingerprints on this to make it even better. And that's a sign of fully embracing the change, the commitment and alignment phase, where they're owning the new way of operating. They are seeing that they have responsibility and they feel responsible for the new ways. They're beginning to integrate the what are we changing and how are we doing this? Perhaps showing some mastery, which is not just being effective at what we're asking them to do, but looking for ways to improve it, to build on it, to strengthen it. So they have a part in actually establishing the new reality. That comes along with some self-confidence we may see, and seeing their part in creating this new reality. That's a really critical piece of sustaining not only the organization's success, but their own. I see my contribution. So these phases are more than words on a model, the curve or what people go through. They actually describe the process of what we need to be supporting to help people move through resistance to take on commitment and alignment. This is what we need to expect and what we need to actively engage in when supporting individuals and teams to get over their resistance. I want to talk a little bit about who's resisting, leaders and stakeholders. So in an organizational change setting, who are the leaders in your organization who are leading the charge for the change, and are they fully aligned behind it? So leadership alignment is a whole other topic and a really essential one, and one that this process can support. It's absolutely essential, especially if your change is transformational. So I share about what to do with leaders given the process I just described if you are in a position to influence them. Many project management folks or change management folks are on the team, but not necessarily set up to directly work with the leaders. In our conscious change leadership approach, we're always set up from the very beginning to have direct influence and partnership with the leaders of a major change. That's what's absolutely essential here. Because the process needs to be tailored to their role, their leadership role, their influence role, and their style. So again, imagine yourself working with the leaders, connecting with them, being present with them, face to face, eye contact, actively listening to their point of view about what they want to see happen and their concerns about it. We need to support them to surface and explore the impacts of the change that they may be experiencing. And those impacts may be individual on them personally. It may be for their function in the organization. It may be for the organization as a whole. We need to allow them to give voice to what stands in the way of them fully committing and aligning with the change. Asking any of those clarifying questions might be extremely helpful, and finding ways to help resolve their impacts. Now, some of the resolutions may be partial, some may be complete, but at least we're being fully present, authentically discussing if this is the impact, this is what we need to be able to do about it. When leaders are really locked into this is what we need to do and this is the timing we have, it's tougher to get them to step back and explore what's really going on inside of them about their concerns about the change that they want to see happen in the organization. And yet those are the conditions that are needed in order for leaders to get over what might be internally resistant in order for them to actually lead in a way that they're in full belief, in full support, and full alignment. Some of this work may happen individually, perhaps in executive coaching. Some happens as a team. So we get team alignment, group alignment, which is absolutely an outcome we want to create when we're supporting an organization to go through, especially if it's a transformation. We need to ask them to engage in some kind of initial action to support, to generate commitment in themselves as well as in others. That may be to communicate about the change, to test the waters about this option or that option with their teams, perhaps begin to model the new way or the new behavior that we're going to be asking of the organization. Any of these things would be helpful to get them partially, if not completely, in the boat of support for the change beyond lip service. So I'm talking about what's really going on inside of them. So that this is what our challenge really is to be able to bring forth what's truly going on for them and support them to move in the direction of the change. And lastly, this is something that we do. We have a program that we call an Executive Alignment Day, where we go through all of this work with leaders of a major transformation. And the last thing we ask them to do at the conclusion of that day, having talked through so many of the impacts and concerns, is to literally take a stand of alignment for the change process. That alignment is not just for the outcome that they're asking of the organization that they want to see happen, but it's for the process that's going to be required to get everyone else in the boat, deal with resistance, make course corrections, alter the outcome, alter the time, alter whatever's needed in order to ultimately get to the optimal solution. So we're asking them to align to the transformational journey, as well as what they collectively want to achieve with their transformation. Now, talking about the process in terms of stakeholders resisting. And so identifying who the stakeholders are who will be impacted. That's the first thing is if you're doing what we call a project community map, some people call it a stakeholder map, we need to look at who's going to be impacted by the change. We need a strategy. So some of the stakeholders we might meet with individually because they're key influencers. Sometimes it's meeting with them in groups. Sometimes it's getting middle management to do this work so they can support their own teams, their own people to go through the change. So there might be a strategy to support middle management to learn how to get people through their resistance. The process is the same, but it's tailored to individual stakeholder needs, their role, their position in the organization, their style. So picture yourself with any group of stakeholders connecting. You're not there to do something to them. You're not there to punish them or to force them into something. You're there to be present with them. What are the clarifying questions you would want to ask them? What will you do with that information? How can you actively listen to their point of view and concerns so they begin to trust based upon you asking true questions about what's going on for them? How will you surface those questions and explore the impacts that are at the source of their concerns? Personally, around their role, their function, their team, their part of the organization. There are impacts at many levels. How can you support them to find ways to resolve or reduce the negative impacts of their concerns? All of that is a process. It may not happen in one meeting. You may need to take concerns to leaders. There may need to be some kind of course correction process. All of that's needed and legitimate and expected in overcoming major areas of resistance. Sometimes their impacts may be resolved completely, sometimes only partially, but at least them seeing you working on their behalf, that's what's really important here. And then how can you give them something positive to do, to go talk to their peers or their teams to do the same process? What are our concerns? What will our role be? How will the organization support us? What training will they provide us so we can be successful in the new state? How will our roles be different? How will we do new team startup? Those are all things that they will feel are supportive to moving into the new reality. What's important to you personally is to stay open, to listen carefully, to show concern authentically, not fake, but authentically show concern for their reality. You may be thinking, wow, this takes a lot of me. This takes a lot of time. Think about the benefit of building trust, the cultural impacts of actually showing up for people, especially the leaders doing some of this work, so that their stakeholders truly feel that the leaders are in their camp. So turning resistance into commitment. It's absolutely everyone's responsibility, from senior leaders, sponsors, our project leaders, our project teams, our consultants, us, our job. So I have a pro tip for you in this. Know that resistance is inevitable. We all do it. It's not bad. It's not negative. It's a predictable challenge. And it's something that because it occurs, we have to plan in advance to minimize it. And doing that at the very beginning, from your change strategy, from the very start, and then actively meeting and working with whatever shows up. When I talk about doing this as a part of change strategy, it's a clear context for how to launch a major change, especially if it's transformational. And so how can we do this in a way that we think about our stakeholders' needs and how we can do this to minimize any triggers, any reactions? Not that it'll ever go away, it won't. But how can we consciously attempt to minimize the negative impact on the folks we desperately need to take on this change? And so the other important thing for you is to stay with it. Stay positive. Address it. I know we all wish so many times, this is taking too long, or there are too many resistors, or we don't have enough time, or we didn't budget for this. It's absolutely essential to set up the conditions to be able to constructively address resistance in these ways. It's worth the investment. Stay neutral, not defensive. Stay present. show interest, and be compassionate. And those, again, are nice words, and everyone can say, yeah. I'm really talking about you finding those places in yourself where you can actively, fully be present, show interest and compassion for what your stakeholders are going through to take on the change you're asking of them. Now, my personal reflection for you, this is an interesting one. Consider what you resist in your own work or in your life. What are examples of where you resist? What is the source of that resistance for you? Is it emotional? Are there fears? Is it disagreement, competition, insecurity? Again, I'm naming a lot of words. They have a lot of meaning inside of them. So you taking some time to truly reflect what's going on in you that is the source of your own resistance, whatever the set of circumstances. Reflect on how you resist. How do you act it out? What is it, saying yes and not doing it? Is it folding your arms? Is it getting belligerent? Is it attacking? Is it blaming? How do you actually act out resistance in your own life? And what then would need to occur for you to see and step out of your pattern of resistance, your way of resisting, and move more towards buy-in and commitment? What would have to happen? What safety zones, what shift in action? And, maybe it's not doing it, but ideally it's about doing it. And so what would actually happen for you to step into the possibility? So buy-in and commitment and alignment are so much easier to live with. Your life and your work will be so much more rewarding to be able to find ways through resistance. I frequently in my own life will say, if something's coming up and I'm resistant to it, I may say, this is what resistance feels like. I'm experiencing it right now. What do I need? What would help me? How do I release this? What's the source of it? So self-reflection is a critical piece of understanding your own process of resisting so that you can then step into testing the limits, building commitment, and then fully embracing. It's incredibly more rewarding to live consciously this way, as every day in our lives, things show up that are challenging for us. And so building these skills personally is so valuable, is so powerful for us. It is a conscious way of living. I hope that you found some value in today. I hope you will reflect on your own resistance patterns and how to move through them consciously. Thanks for spending time with me today. Today's subject is one of the key topics that we feature in our Leading Transformational Change online program. If you'd like to learn more about leading transformational change, go to beingfirst.com/LTC. Thanks for spending some time with me today. I hope you gained some valuable insights for your work. Please send me your questions and challenges by going to askdrchange.com.